The story begins when we meet our main character, Sari, who arrives at a cafe with her coworkers. There, she greets the barista Jiang, who is her childhood friend. He has a secret crush on her, so he gives her an extra slice of cake. After that, she sits down with her coworkers who congratulate her on being promoted from an intern to a full-time employee. When asked about how old she is, she says she's 30. Hearing this, the coworkers are shocked and they advise her to find a nice boy and get married immediately. Afterward, Sari calls her two best friends Rumi and Suwon and tells them what her coworkers said. However, her friends advise her to enjoy her youth and not pay any attention to others. They also suggest going to a club to celebrate her new job. At night, Sari feels a bit hesitant to enter the club because it's her first time in a place like this. But her friends force her to go inside as they've reserved a table. They unwind with a few drinks and have a blast together. Meanwhile, a boy named Harin keeps staring at Sari, and she notices him as well. Moments later, he approaches her and wishes her a happy birthday, assuming it's her birthday. However, she clarifies that they're celebrating because of a promotion. The two seem to hit it off, so Sari's friends encourage her to go out with him. Since Sari fancies him as well, she takes him home for the night. The next morning, Sari wakes up beside Harim and the two share breakfast together. When she asks how old he is, he jokes and says that he's 45 years old. Moments later, he gets a call from his mother and goes outside to talk. Sari takes advantage of this opportunity and checks his wallet. To her utter shock, the boy turns out to be just 20 years old. Feeling embarrassed, she angrily throws him out of the house. A little while later, Jiang shows up with breakfast. However, because of her bad mood, she ends up kicking him out of the house as well. Later, Sari goes jogging with her friends and tells them what happened with Harim. When the girls dig for the juicy goss, she admits that they didn't make love and only shared a bed. Hearing this, her friends are disappointed and start looking for a new guy on the internet. Wanting to distance herself, Sari starts backing away. In doing so, she accidentally bumps into a man named Sunjae, causing his phone to fall. He was listening to music on his earphones, but the fall caused it to start playing on the speakers. Since the music was quite effeminate, Sari and her friends laugh at him, causing him to flee in embarrassment. That evening, Sari hangs out with Jiang and tells him about her encounter with Harim. She regrets not being intimate with him because she just found out that he's a famous model. She also admits that this was the reason she didn't let Jiang into her place this morning. Hearing this, he becomes concerned and warns her not to get involved with random men. Later, when Sari returns home, she senses someone's presence in her apartment. She notices a man in the dark and nervously asks who he is. Suddenly, the lights turn on, and the man claims that he's her husband. Turns out the man's name is Woo Song, and he's Sari's ex-husband. They were married for 10 years and used to live in the US, but he cheated on her, so she divorced him and moved back to Korea. He apologizes to her and begs for a second chance, but she angrily kicks him out of the house. The following morning, Sari's best friends are at Jiang's cafe talking about Woo Song and how he's dared to return looking for forgiveness. When he walks into the cafe, they lose it and begin throwing coffee beans at him. Later, he approaches Jiang and asks for his help in reuniting with Sari, since they're very close. However, the latter bluntly tells him that there's nothing he can do for him. That evening, Sari goes out to party with her coworkers and gets shit-faced. As she loses all her inhibitions on the dance floor, the company's CEO arrives. He turns out to be none other than Sunjae. Seeing how much fun they're having, he decides to leave them alone and goes outside. Later, Sari also heads outside where she is approached by another one of her coworkers. He claims that he has fallen in love with her and wants to date her. Her supervisor also suggests that she give him a chance. Just then, she spots Sunjae in the distance and decides to approach him. She recalls seeing him in the park, but is unaware that he is her CEO. This is because he's rarely at the office. Sari pretends to talk to him in order to ditch her coworker and supervisor. Sunjae catches on and plays along. He then offers her a ride home, which she accepts. As they get into the car, Sari receives a call from Woo Song, who angrily asks where she is. He says he's at her house, but she tells him to leave and hangs up on him. Following this, Sari says she doesn't want to go home, so Sunjae takes her somewhere else and buys her chocolate milk. As they talk, she confides in him about how her boss always nags her to find a guy, saying that she should already be married at 30 years old. She also adds that her company's CEO doesn't know how to run it well because he's never there and has no idea what his employees are doing. During their conversation, she admits that she is recently divorced. She's relieved that she can finally let this out because no one at the office knows her situation. Sunjae asks if her ex was the one who called her earlier, and she admits it was. The next day, Sari arrives at the company photo shoot and the models turn out to be Rumi and Harim. Moments later, Sunjae arrives on set, shocking Sari. Since she spent the whole night venting to him, she gets very uncomfortable and tries to avoid him. Meanwhile, Sunjae is more interested in her than in the photo shoot, which Harim senses and finds annoying. Afterward, the CEO goes out to eat with Sari and some other employees. Just like always, the nosy supervisor continues to talk about how she's single. This annoys Sunjae, and he tells him to mind his own damn business and keep his nose out of others. After the supervisor leaves, Sari apologizes to Sunjae for talking badly about him the night before. He says it's okay, and he promises to not tell anybody about her divorce. Later, when Sari arrives home, she sees a stuffed cat at her door. This makes her emotional, and she recalls her beautiful memories with Woo-sung. After that, she tries to enter her apartment, but the password doesn't work. Meanwhile, we notice a mysterious person watching her from a distance. Suddenly, the lights go out, prompting her to run towards the street. There, she runs into Harim, who invites her to get something to eat. During the meal, she mentions that she must have forgotten her door password, and he laughs. Afterward, he books a hotel room for her as she can't get into her place. But just then, Woo-sung appears and sees them together. He starts making a scene, yet Harim has no idea what's going on. Woo-sung claims to be her husband, but she corrects him, saying they're divorced. Hearing this, Harim says he doesn't care about her past and grabs her hand. But as he tries to take her away, Woo-sung hits her. This results in a full-on brawl between the two. Once they're done, Sari takes him outside and begs Woo-sung to leave her alone, saying that she doesn't love him anymore. Following this, Harim walks her to her hotel room and leaves. Later, we see our girl alone and crying. She recalls Woo-sung's proposal and how happy she once was in their marriage. The following day, she calls Jeong for help, and he finally manages to unlock her door. Just then, he finds Sari's next-door neighbor staring at them oddly, which he finds suspicious, but leaves it alone. As they step inside, he invites her to his art exhibit that evening. Since Sari is free and has nothing better to do, she agrees. Later, Woo-sung meets Jeong at a cafe and tells him about the drama that transpired the previous night. As he loudly rambles on, Jeong notices that Sari's coworkers are listening in on their conversation. So he takes Woo-sung outside and scolds him for gossiping about others in public. Later, Sari receives a text from Sunjae summoning her to his office. He asks her what kind of food she likes and invites her to join him for dinner. While at the restaurant, he says he wants to give her a gift and asks what she likes. But Sari responds by saying that she doesn't need anything. Since she's not eating much, he urges her to have more, but she says that she's on a diet. Sunjae then offers to join her for a jog in the morning, but she claims to have other plans. That evening, it's Jeong's exhibition, and he is excitedly waiting for Sari. Meanwhile, Harim also arrives there with the hopes of seeing her. However, both guys feel jilted when they see Sari arrive with her CEO. The three men introduce themselves to each other, and they all hint that they want to be with Sari, which causes the situation to become a bit tense. Afterward, Sari tries to pitch the exhibition to Sunjae, but Jeong intervenes and behaves rudely. Soon, he plays a cat animation featuring a girl identical to Sari. This makes everyone realize that he's in love with her and that this is his way of expressing his feelings. Upset by the situation, Sunjae decides to leave, but Sari follows him and asks what happened. He realizes that the exhibition was intended for her and points out that men and women can never really be just friends. Sari tries to change the subject to work, but he makes it clear that at this moment, he is not speaking to her as her CEO. After he leaves, Sari confronts Jeong about his rude behavior. However, he doesn't seem to give a flip. Instead, he blurts out his feelings for her, leaving our girl in shock. He reminds her of the time when she returned from the US, devastated. Jeong was there for her, but now he realizes she never appreciated him and just took him for granted. Hearing this, an upset Sari returns home and starts crying, realizing the hurt she's caused. Moments later, she notices someone opening her door. To her surprise, it turns out to be her next-door neighbor, which freaks her out. However, the man claims he thought it was his apartment and leaves in a hurry. The next morning, Sari returns to work and falls asleep during a meeting. However, instead of scolding her, Sunjae wakes her up and compliments her on her hard work. This obviously pisses off the other employees. Later, she discovers that a picture of her and the CEO claiming that they are dating has spread around the office. She also finds out that everyone now knows about her divorce as well. Embarrassed, she tries to leave, but soon comes across Soon-jae, who tells her not to worry. He holds her hand, but right at that moment, the other employees arrive and notice this. To make matters worse, Sari's ex-mother-in-law arrives at the office and asks to speak with her. They go to a cafe, and the woman urges her to get back with her son, saying that he is very well off. She claims that he will inherit everything from his parents because he has no other siblings. However, Sari quickly replies that she doesn't want their money and has no plans to get back together with Woo-sung. After this, she decides it's best to go home, as everyone at work is gossiping about her. Later, Ji-young finds out about what happened, so he decides to go see her in person. However, upon reaching her apartment, he becomes heartbroken when he sees Harim there. Following this, Ji-young goes to a cafe and starts drinking. Soon, Woo-sung and Soon-jae join him, and the three drink together while talking about Sari. The ex-husband reveals that she blocked him from everything, and the other two also relate how she crushed their hearts. Woo-sung then mentions that Sari doesn't like guys who drink, so defiantly, the three begin to pound them back. The next morning, Sari wakes up and reads the comments on her and Sun-jae's picture, which upsets her. However, a little while later, her friends arrive and try to cheer her up. Meanwhile, we see the three guys waking up in a cafe after spending the entire night drinking. Ji-young receives a text from Rumi, reassuring him that Sari is doing okay. This brings some relief to the guys. Ji-young then discloses that he's selling the cafe and planning to travel for a while. Hearing this, Woo-sung gets upset, wondering who will take care of Sari if he leaves. The CEO confidently says that he will, but this only angers the other two. As they bicker like children, Ji-young asks Soon-jae to address the rumors surrounding Sari before focusing on anything else. That evening, Rumi and Sari are hanging out when they unexpectedly get a visit from one of their friends, Jin. The scene then shifts to the next morning, where a confident Sari returns to work, surprising everyone. She confronts the mean comments circulating about her and admits that she's a divorced woman. She says she doesn't have any kids and urges her coworkers to approach her directly rather than gossip behind her back. She also makes it clear that she's not dating their CEO, and when she was an intern, she had never met him or even seen his face. Sari states that she landed her position through hard work, not because of personal relationships. Later on, she meets with Soon-jae, who praises her on how bravely she defended herself. He admits that he has feelings for her, but asks her not to respond since it will only break his heart. He assures her that he won't cross any boundaries or make her uncomfortable. Sari is happy to hear this and wonders what he was doing last night with the other men. Turns out that the three got so drunk that they uploaded drunken posts to their Instagram accounts. Not knowing what to say, the CEO claims that they were just hanging out. After this, she goes bowling with her friends and they talk about how Jin showed up at her house last night. In a flashback, we see that Jin had told Sari about the woman who spread the gossip about her and published the picture. She was feeling guilty about not saying anything sooner, but our heroine thanked her for coming forward. In the next scene, Sari and Woo-sung meet in a cafe. This place holds special memories for them, as it's where he proposed. He begs her for another chance and asks why she isn't afraid to live alone. Sari says that it was when she was with him that she felt a sense of loneliness. She reminds him of how he didn't allow her to work, so she spent her days waiting for him like a pet. Woo-sung realizes his mistakes and admits he can't change their past, but asks her to create a new future. However, Sari says it's pointless because she doesn't love him anymore. After this, she returns home and breaks down in tears. Days later, on her birthday, Sari visits Ji-young at his cafe. He wishes her a happy birthday and shares that he's going on a hiatus. Although she's upset by the news, she wishes him well on his journey. The two also agree to remain good friends, despite what happened between them. Upon returning home, Sari discovers flowers on her doorstep. At the same moment, her weird neighbor arrives, saying he'll throw them away for her. He also wishes her a happy birthday. Our girl is creeped out by this, so she immediately texts her friends. Later, Rumi calls Ji-young and informs him about the situation. The latter then remembers all the instances where the man showed up at Sari's house, claiming to have mistakenly entered the wrong apartment. Worried, he tries to call her, but her phone is not in service as she accidentally dropped it in the toilet. Shortly after, after, there's a knock on Sari's door, and once again, it's her neighbor. He explains that he couldn't bring himself to throw away such lovely flowers. He then barges in, claiming he'll place them in water. However, he soon confesses that he'd been sending flowers to her for weeks, but she never thanked him. This makes Sari very defensive, and she grabs a stun gun to attack him. Sari begins hitting her neighbor and her friends who had just arrived to celebrate her birthday, and despite not knowing what is going on, join her. Following this, the girls take him to the police station where the neighbor claims to be innocent. The cops explain that they're unable to file a complaint because there is no actual evidence that he's done anything wrong. This irritates the girls, so they start hitting him again. Soon after, Jeong, Harim, Musong, and Sunjae also arrive, and they demand the neighbor be arrested. Unfortunately, despite their best efforts, the man is released due to lack of evidence. Following this, everyone leaves the station, and later, Sari's friends surprise her with a birthday cake. They tell her to make a wish before blowing out the candles. In the final scene, we see Sari and her friends jogging through the park. Rumi teasingly asks her which suitor she has chosen. Sari avoids the question and runs off, implying that she didn't choose any of the four men.